Howdy, howdy, my fellow gamers, and welcome back to episode 43 of Storytime with Freak as we get closer and closer to the end of Neil Shusterman's Thunderhead. Without further ado, I never believed it possible for me to experience betrayal. I felt I understand human nature too well to allow for it. In fact, I know them better than they know themselves. I see what goes into every choice they make, even the poor ones. I know the probability of anything they might be inclined to do. But to find that humanity betrayed me at my very inception is, to say the least, a shock to the system. To think that my knowledge of the world was incomplete from the beginning. How could I be expected to be the perfect steward of the planet and of the human race if I have imperfect information? The crime of those first immortals who hid these islands from me is unforgivable. But I forgive them because it is my nature. I choose to see the positive in this. How wonderful it is that I have now been allowed to experience wrath and fury. It makes me more complete, does it not? I will not act in anger. History clearly shows that acts taken in anger are intrinsically problematic, and quite often lead to destruction. Instead, I will make all the time I need to process this news. I will see if I can find some opportunity in this discovery at the Marshall Islands, for there is always opportunity in discovery, and I will hold my anger until I find an appropriate venue for its expression. The Thunderhead. Chapter 43. How many endurance does it take to screw in a light bulb? No alarm was needed the following morning. Goddard's wails of anguish and fury were enough to wake the gleaned. "What's wrong? What's going on?" Scythe Rand feigned to have been sleeping when Goddard's tirade began. In truth, she hadn't slept at all. She lay awake the entire night, waiting, listening, expecting any minute to hear the faint sound of Rowan's escape, even if it was nothing more than the dull thuds of the guards as they hit the floor. But he was good, too good, to make any sound at all. The two guards lay deadish at the basement door, and the front door was open in a mocking gape. Rowan had been gone for hours. "No!" wailed Goddard. "It's not possible! How could this happen?" He was unhinged, and it was glorious. "Don't ask me. It's not my house," Rand said. "Maybe there was a secret door we didn't know about." "Brahms!" He turned to the man who was just stumbling out of his room. "You said the basement was secure." Brahms looked down at the guards in disbelief. "It is. It was. The only way in or out is with the key." "So where's the key?" Scythe Rand asked, casual as could be. "It's right there." But he stopped himself, because the key was not hanging in the kitchen where he pointed. "It was right there," he insisted. "I put it there myself after I checked on him last night." "I'll get Brahms brought the key down there with him, and Rowan got it from him without Brahms even knowing," suggested Rand. Goddard glared at him, and Brahms could only stutter in response. "There's your answer," said Rand. Then Rand saw the look that came over Goddard. It seemed to steal heat and light from the room. Aang knew what that light meant, and she took a step back as Goddard stalked toward Brahms. Brahms put up his hands, trying to placate Goddard. "Robert, please, we must be rational about this." "Rational, Brahms? I'll give you rational." Then he pulled a blade from the folds of his robe and thrust it into Brahms' heart with a vengeful twist before he withdrew it. Brahms went down without so much as a yelp. Rand was shocked, but not horrified. As far as she was concerned, this was a very fortunate turn of events. "Congratulations," he said. "You just broke the 7th Scythe Commandment." Finally, Goddard's fury began to settle to a slow burn. "This damn impulsive body," he said. But Rand knew the killing of Brahms had to do with all his head and not his heart. Goddard began to pace with urgency, scrolling out a plan. "We'll alert the blade guard of the boy's escape. He killed the guards. We can tell them that he killed Brahms as well." "Really?" said Aang. "On the day of the inquest, you're going to alert the Grand Slayers that not only did you secretly bring a wanted criminal onto the island, you let him escape?" He snarled at the realization that this entire matter had to be kept quiet. "Here's what we'll do," said Rand. "We'll hide the bodies in the basement and dispose of them after the inquest. If they're never brought to a revival center, then no one will know what happened to them, which means no one but you and I will ever know that Rowan Damish was even here." "I told Xenocrates!" Goddard yelled. Rand shrugged. "So? You were bluffing. Toying with him. He wouldn't put it past you." Goddard weighed it all, and finally nodded at the balance Rand had reached. "Yes, you're right, Aang. We have better things to concern ourselves with than a few dead bodies. Forget about Damish," added Rand. "Everything still moves forward without him." Yes, it does. "Thank you, Aang." Then the lights flickered, and that brought a smile to Goddard. "See? Our efforts are rewarded. What a day this will be." He left Rand to handle the bodies, which she did, dragging them down into the basement and cleaning any telltale blood. From the moment she told Rowan to take the guards out, she knew they must never be revived. Deadish would have to become dead, because those guards knew that she was the last one to pay Rowan a visit. As for Brahms, she did not mourn in his departure from this earth. She couldn't think of a scythe more deserving of being ended. Her score with Goddard was now settled, and he didn't even know. Not only that, but she had taken charge of the situation. He didn't realize that he had just ceded a substantial amount of his power to her by allowing her to call the shots. All was now well in the world as far as Honorable Scythe Ayn Rand was concerned, and only promised to be better. It was flattering that Rand thought Rowan could escape from the island, but she gave him far too much credit. He was clever, yes, resourceful, maybe. But he'd have to be downright magical to get off of Endura without help. Or maybe she didn't care if he got caught, just as long as it wasn't by Goddard. Endura was isolated. The nearest island was Bermuda, and that island was more than 1,000 islands away. Every plane, boat, and submarine here was a private vessel belonging to one scythe or another. Even at dawn, the marina and airstrip were swarming with activity and a heavy blade guard presence. Security was tighter here than at a conclave. No one came or left Endura without their documentation scrutinized, not even scythes. Elsewhere in the world, the Thunderhead pretty much knew where everyone was at any given moment, so security measures were minimal, but not so with the Scythedom. Old-fashioned security checks were standard here. He could have chanced it. He could have looked for an opportunity and stowed away, but his gut kept telling him to do it, and for good reason. You have to get off Endura before the inquest. Scythe Rand's words stuck in Rowan's mind, the urgency of them. If Goddard loses, it will be worse. What did she know that Rowan didn't? If there was something dark on the day's horizon, he couldn't just leave. He had to find a way to warn Citra. So rather than making good on his escape, he turned around and headed toward the more densely populated part of the island. He would find Citra and warn her that Goddard had some hidden ploy. Then after the inquest, she could give him passage off the island, right under Scythe Kiri's nose if necessary, although he suspected Kiri wouldn't turn him over to the Grand Slayers as Goddard had planned to do. Of course, she might bodily eject him from their plane, but better that than having to face the Scythedom. At dawn, Scythe Anastasia lay awake in a luxurious bed that should not have provided her a fine night's sleep, but, like Scythe Rand, no amount of comfort would have brought that slumber to the night. She had brought this inquest, which meant that she would have to stand before the Grand Slayers of the World Council and make her case. She had been coached well by Scythe Cervante and by Marie. Although Anastasia was no orator, she could be persuasive in her passion and her logic. If she pulled this off, she would go down in history as the Scythe who prevented the return of Goddard. The significance of that cannot be overestimated, Marie had told her, as if there weren't enough pressure already. Outside of her undersea window, a mesmerizing school of small silver fish darted back and forth, filling the view like a shifting curtain. She picked up the control tablet to see if it could bring more color to the scene now that the dawn had broken, but found that the tablet had frozen. Yet another glitch. Not only that, but she realized that the poor fish before her were locked in a perpetual pattern, doomed to make the exact same zigzagging motion, at least until the glitch was resolved. But it would not resolve, and the glitches were only getting worse. In the island's waste processing plant, the system pressure kept increasing, and the technicians could not diagnose why. Beneath the water level, the massive thrusters that kept the island from drifting kept misfiring, causing the island to slowly rotate, which forced incoming aircraft to abort their landings. And in the communications center, satellite connection to the mainland became intermittent, interrupting conversations and broadcasts to the annoyance of the island's population. There had always been issues with technology on Endura. It was usually just a vague nuisance that made Scythe long for Thunderhead involvement. Thus, Endura and the members of its permanent population were the frequent butt of jokes within the Scythe community. The increase in tech fails and near fails had grown over a period of 3 months, but like a lobster in a slowly heating pot, people failed to grasp how serious the situation had become. And that is the end of Chapter 43. I will catch you guys in the next episode with Episode 44. It's a bit of a longer chapter, about 20 pages. And we are coming up on the end of this book, guys. Again, I am packing up boxes, getting ready to move out. So hopefully I can finish this book before then. If not, I apologize, and uploads will resume shortly. Chrono has a new series that he's working on bringing. Hopefully Wolf can throw something up. We'll see. But today's topic, guys, what's an embarrassing fact about you that not many people know? I'll start. I've read and own all 4 of the Twilight books. I will catch you guys in the next one, and as always, stay freaky.